Hello to my gorgeous, beautiful, amazing people. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the YouTube, the Spotify, wherever the hell you are indulging. Divulging? I keep saying indulging in content, but that's not the right word, is it? It's divulging. Anyway, welcome. I thought I'd do something a little bit different in today's episode and do a Q&A because I get questions from you guys on social media, in my DMs, YouTube, TikTok, just everywhere all the time. So I thought, why not do an episode, a video on a monthly maybe basis. We'll see how this goes, where I just answer your questions. So I put a little question box out and I picked a handful of some of the best and most valuable ones that I believe to answer in today's episode. So if you really like this style of video, guys, just comment below that you like it, that you'd like to see more of these, and one will provide. So enough of the small talk. We don't like small talk here, but just one quick ask, one teeny tiny ask, besides from obviously let me know if you like this style of episode, is please, if you have enjoyed this, make sure you are subscribed wherever you are watching this or listening to this. It really does help me out. Leave a comment, share it to someone that needs to see it, because it helps me to bring more content like this and obviously help more people who are struggling with their health, their fitness, coming to terms with ADHD, autism, etc, etc, etc. So on that note, let's get stuck in. So question one, I have heard keto is good for, good for ADHD. Is this true? So when it comes to a keto diet, when it comes to any diet, people will say that it can help with this, and the other. And it's always good to know that with any sort of dietary approach that is so nuanced, that there are pros and cons to all approaches to tackling nutrition. But it's one, is it actually the best for you in terms of overall health and your goals? And two, is it going to be the right approach for you? So personally, I don't like keto for most people because carbohydrates are such a important part of our diet for energy, for mental focus, because they taste really good and it stops that sort of restrict binge cycle. Obviously, that's where a lot of our nutrients are in fiber, which is very good for our digestion, vitamins and minerals from fruit and vegetables. But where people might find that it is supportive of ADHD. So what can happen if you have too many carbohydrates, especially those that are quite sugary or ones that don't really work well for your body, is you can have blood sugar rises and crashes, which can obviously impact our mood and our focus and productivity. Something that also happens is when you have a high amount of carbs basically release this amino acid called tryptophan, which converts into sort of melatonin. Well, it does. It's a precursor for melatonin and serotonin. So this is why sometimes you can feel quite sleepy after having quite a high carbohydrate meal. So some people might find with ADHD that they're, because of the blood sugar rises and crashes, these kind of like ups and downs, that they feel more focused, more productive by having a lower carbohydrate diet. But in my opinion, that should be lower carb rather than just going keto and getting rid of them completely. Because like I said, we do need carbs for, especially if you've got performance-based goals in the gym, and also for fiber as well. Another reason people might find keto works for them with ADHD is it removes decisions, right? So when it comes to ADHD, and especially if your goal is weight loss with ADHD, deciding what to eat and where to get food from can be quite, there's a lot of decision there, which can, have that executive dysfunction shutdown, feeling quite overwhelmed, quite paralyzed. Whereas because keto is quite restrictive in terms of like realistically what you can put together in a meal, because a lot of the fun components of a meal are the carbs, right? If you think about most meals that you maybe enjoy eating, like any sort of pasta dishes, remove the carb, what are you left with? Like meat and veg. Anything like, like steak and chips, well, steak and veg, lasagna, all these things, curries, most of them have a component of carbs. So you take that out, it then really simplifies things. So it can remove a lot of decision fatigue and overwhelm of like what meals to create, because usually you have to be quite repetitive and quite basic. But again, my sort of argument against that would be, well, keep it basic and repetitive, but include carbs. So you could have the same meal on repeat, week in, week out, week in and out, in and out, in and out. And you can just keep it really, really simple. It don't have to be big, complicated recipes just because that's what other people do. So personally, I can see why people might benefit from having a ketogenic diet. But what we do also know is that eating carbohydrates, we generally get like a big hit of serotonin and potentially a bit of dopamine as well. Carbs taste great and they do give us that. So what can happen is if you try and go keto and, you do genuinely really, really like carbs and want them in your diet, that craving for that dopamine, that serotonin from them will eventually, you've only got so much willpower. And then when that runs out, what you have is this, what we call like, I can't remember the name of it. It's constraint theory. So the idea is that when you say you're not going to do something and then you do it, you tend to go overboard with it rather than just being able to have a little bit. So because you get that hit of dopamine and serotonin that you've been deprived of, it's like, oh my God. And remember as well with ADHD is there's a lot of all or nothing. So if you said, I'm not having carbs, then you have some and you've ruined it, then you go hell for leather and overeat on them. And that's why people then might think that carbs make them fat or carbs they've got no control with, but it's just because of this. So personally, a low carbohydrate diet might work for you and your cognitive function with ADHD, but I personally would not get rid of them. Next question. Is it okay to same foods every day or not? Again, I'm guessing Jessie means eat the same foods every day. And just to go back off what I said just then, absolutely it is. Especially with ADHD because of that removing the decision fatigue and paralysis, which leads to us skipping meals or just eating snacky things, not proper whole nutritious foods. A lot of the time, most typical people and a lot of my clients who are neurotypicals, I see, when they give me their meal plan for the week, they're having different things all the time, which is really cool. But that for me would just stress me out. It'd be too chaotic. I find it very easy to have the same things pretty much on repeat. So I've got no decisions. I know what I'm cooking, when I'm cooking it. I've got the ingredients in. I'm not buying random things and wasting lots of food and money, which is obviously quite common with ADHD if you have all these ideas of creative things that you just don't end up doing and then you're wasting all the food. So personally, I think having a structure and mostly the same meals every single day is valuable. The issue of that is if you see that as like a black and white rule of I have to eat the same things every day to work with my brain, but then you're actually bored of what you eat and you don't really like it, and then you're more likely to want to overeat on other things because you're actually bored of what you're eating. So do ensure that you enjoy it, and maybe when things start to feel a bit boring, that's your cue to then switch it up. And I like to recommend same but different. So something that I do with a lot of my clients is something we call the 80-20, to ensure that we're getting enough nutrient diversity, because potentially, depends obviously how varied the meals are you're having. If you're having quite similar meals, you might be missing out on certain nutrients. So you might not be having enough different kinds of fats or different colours of fruits and veggies, etc. So what we do is we say have 70-80% the same, but just tweak one thing every other day or throughout the week. So it might be the vegetable sauce that you have with your evening meal is different every single day, and the way to make that work is get them in frozen so then they don't go out of date, or maybe have a different meat with your evening meal. It could be something like changing the carbohydrate source. So maybe your evening meal is always going to be like a base of, let's say, steak and veg, but then one day you could have rice, one day you could have potatoes. So same but different. And something a lot of my clients do is meal prep the main bulk of the meal. So they might do a fajita chicken, and then they just vary what they're having throughout the week. So it might be one day wraps, one day rice, etc. But realistically, eating the same things can actually be seriously beneficial for an ADHD brain, and actually help you to be more consistent with getting enough protein, getting enough fruit and veg. And obviously, if you are aiming to lose weight, be consistent with a calorie deficit. How can ADHD medication impact your training? Tips for restarting after break in habit. So this is kind of two questions in one. So ADHD medication might potentially have an impact on training if it's having an impact on mood, motivation, or energy levels. So obviously everyone responds very differently, and I've had clients on various different medications and everyone's experience is completely unique to them. It could, if you're feeling quite tired or nauseous or whatever, it could obviously have an impact on your training for sure. But what I would do is, rather than tell yourself it's going to have an impact, if you say, I'm taking this medication, it's going to make me tired, it's going to make me this, it's going to make me that, then it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. You're just going to focus on the negatives. So what I say to my clients is, go into that gym, go into that workout with just the most positive mindset that you can, but the mindset of I'm going to do my best, right? Because the two extremes aren't helpful. The extreme of thinking that this medication is going to make everything really hard and tiring and you're going to struggle because then you're just going to focus on that. But then the extreme of putting so much pressure on yourself to have a perfect workout, and maybe you do feel more tired or a bit sick or whatever, and then you can't perform as well as you normally would, and then beating yourself up. So I always say, and this is regardless to medication, this is, menstrual cycle, sleep, just day to day, right? Always go into each workout with the most positive mindset of I'm going to give this my absolute all, and just vibe it, right? Because sometimes you'll go into a workout feeling like absolute shit, and it's the best workout ever. You get PBs, you feel amazing. You'll sometimes go in and everything's perfect, digestion's good, sleep's good, mindset's good, and everything just feels shit. So it's just so much nuance to it. But as long as you go in with the right mindset, you'll be fine. And then just have compassion if things don't always go out, because there's so many things beyond your control when it comes to how you perform in a workout or how that workout feels. So you can't be hard on yourself because there's only so much that you can do. But mindset is probably the one thing that you can 100% control. And then in terms of getting restarted after a break, I personally think that when you've had a break in something, whether it's illness, whether it's a holiday, whether it's you've just fallen off a little bit, the best thing you can do at first is to be very intentional before it becomes more like rhythm, right? So if you've, created a habit of maybe training or whatever, and it's become very like, rhythmic? What's the word I'm looking for there? Routine. Rhythmic, anyway, hashtag rhythmic, maybe that's gonna be our new cool word. You kind of just go, like, I'm in a routine now with my gym where I'm not really obviously I have to plan it into my day and decide when I'm gonna fit it in around work, but I'm going to the gym all the time because that's just part of my routine. But if I'd lost that routine, what I would do personally is I would sit down I still do this anyway, but I would sit down and book it in, not say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym on Monday or I'm going to train on Monday. You literally put it into your calendar exactly when, where, and otherwise you're just relying on that motivation. And especially if you've had a break, that can be quite hard, that get up and go. So book it into your diary. The second thing is to make it as something as enjoyable as you want it to be. So if you're like, oh, I need to get back into training, but you're kind of dreading it, well, is there a way that you could get back into training that's more fun for you? So do you actually enjoy this style of training? Maybe you go and do like a gym class or something else, or maybe you get an accountability buddy. Get a new playlist, get a new gym outfit. Like give yourself something that gives you a bit of novelty, a bit of fun to want to go back to do that thing. Because if you're dreading it and like, oh, I need, a bit like when I go to work. I mean, I don't have that because I love what I do. But what can you do to actually be looking forward to going to do that thing? And then something I do with a few clients when we're building habits and routines, when there's struggle, is we gamify it a little bit. So we say, right, so let's say it's going to the gym. Every time you go to the gym, put a sticker on a chart or tally it. And when you get to 20 gym sessions, give yourself a reward or buy yourself something, or that thing you've wanted to do, go and do it. So then there's like incentive to do it. And I know that might seem childish, but we are all just big kids at heart. So those would be my best bits of advice. And also just thinking about like future self, because maybe in the moment you might be like, oh, I don't really want to go to the gym. But reminding yourself how you're going to feel when you're back in the routine, like what's the benefit of you going? And then I don't want these videos to be too long because I know myself, I don't like listening to super long ones. But hey, if you want longer ones, let me know. I'm just going to answer one more today. And that is, I have ADHD and I've always wondered, can ADHD affect your ability to lose weight? I gain muscle mass very easily and lose fat mass very slowly. Again, the speed at which you gain muscle and lose fat to an extent is not something that is directly linked to ADHD, in that ADHD affects your genes so that you gain, this person probably has something genetically, and I'm very jealous, which means that they can gain muscle tissue very quickly. So maybe it's higher levels of certain hormones, where they're from like a hereditary background. We know that sort of like Black Caribbean backgrounds, genetically they do put on muscle mass a lot quicker. But in terms of like the direct impact of ADHD, absolutely not. What ADHD can do for weight loss is more of an indirect impact. So what I mean by this is all the challenges that come with having a neurodivergent brain can kind of cross transfer into weight loss. So what I mean by this is like executive dysfunctioning. So poor planning, poor organization. If you're not planning your meals, you're not organizing when you're going to go to the gym and do your steps, things are going to get missed, which means you're not going to do everything you need to do to lose weight. We've got the dopamine seeking, which means we're more driven to those highly indulgent, sugary, carby, delicious foods. The foods which, higher in calories, lead to weight gain. ADHD brains tend to work more in all or nothings. So you're either on 100% on plan, sticking to your diet and healthy eating perfectly in the gym, or you're not doing any of it. And it's those extremes of doing nothing that tend to counteract the work that you've done, because it's not a case of you just let a few habits slip. It's like everything's going back to the way it was. ADHD is generally, we see a lot more struggles with mood. And we know that, again, if you're lower mood, what's one of the most comforting things that we have in this day and age to support our mood is food. Emotional eating is massive in today's society. So again, more predisposed to that. You've got, I'm not trying to think of something, sleep issues. We know that poor sleep impacts mood, but also impacts our hunger signaling. We know ADHD is a lot of the time struggle with introspection and time blindness. So they can go all day without properly eating, get to the end of the day, be starving, and then overeat. So what I'm trying to say here is I'm not trying to be negative and say it's impossible, because it's absolutely not. I've done it. I help my clients do it. I see people do it day in, day out. But it's just to show you that there are valid reasons why weight loss can feel hard with ADHD if you haven't done the things to work with your ADHD brain to work through that, right? I only say that it is impossible or really, really hard if you've not actually understood how to work with those things. Because on the flip side, there are things that maybe you wouldn't find in a typical diet or a typical weight loss approach that do support ADHDers and losing weight that not a lot of people talk about. But that's what I share on my page. So obviously you're in the right place for that. But does it directly impact it? Absolutely not. No. So that's going to be it for today, guys. If you have enjoyed this style, please let me know. I will do it again, and I will put question boxes probably up on my social media, Instagram, TikTok. So make sure you're following me there if you want your question answered. Or actually, if you just leave a comment here as well, I will make sure that everyone who's commented on this one there is priority as well. So if you want to drop a comment here as well, that's absolutely fine. But other than that, I will love you and leave you for today. Have a wonderful one, whatever you are doing, and I will speak to you very soon.